Firstly, we just also want to give a quick shout out to this incredible venue, Charlie's. Please give them a warm round of applause. Yes. So, my dear loving boo, who's also in the room, when we were looking for a venue, found this one online, and then we found people who had been here before. It feels like home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It feels really intimate. So the thing about it is, Musa and I typically record the show on our own in a studio. Look, it's a decent studio. Shout out to Sweet Spot Audio. But it's Musa and I and our engineer Ofi, and it's pretty intimate, right? So I don't want you to think just because Musa and I speak for a living, among other things, that this is not weird for us. This is kind of weird because you guys are part of what's usually a really intimate situation.
Yeah, we usually look into each other's eyes like this.
We gaze.
Yeah, and we
then we look away when it gets awkward.
When you talk about artificial intelligence, we look away.
Look away. It's like so no, for real, guys. This is 3 years in the making. A little podcast called The African Tech Roundup is hatched in my home on a couch not unlike the one you're sitting on. And within a year and a half of that, it's the largest podcast of its kind in the world. And within another sort of year and a half of that, we have, as co-founder, the second person Facebook hired in Africa. As part of the team, we have an incredible head of growth in Tayo Akinyemi. Please wave.
Hello,
She's being a hi, Tayo.
She's
Come on, guys, wave back. What's wrong with you? Come on, be nice, Amsterdam. Tayo's based in Chicago. Musa and I in Johannesburg. Our core advisor, a certain tour, Holstead, is in Madagascar. You guys are part of a really big dream coming together. 2/3 of our audience is away from the African continent. Amsterdam, like I said, the second largest city audience in Europe after London. 8th country overall is the Netherlands in terms of listenership. All from an idea that got hatched on a couch in Johannesburg. So it's not lost on us that you guys have spent time and money to spend time with us and make this dream happen. Once again, welcome and give yourselves a warm flipping round of applause.
Yeah, woo! All right, so tonight we're making magic and we're making history all at the same time, and you're going to be part of that process, which is really exciting for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
So aside from keeping it academic, we're trying to get into the heads and minds of a lot of people that are making things tick. We're trying to take the agenda and the narrative around what Africa needs to do in the next century, and we're trying to make sure that we kind of fly the flag as much as possible. But tonight, I think it will be all about us kind of bringing the intimacy to Amsterdam, and hence why we're bringing the village here, right?
Yeah, we're calling it Village Diaries for a reason. Hashtag Village Diaries Amsterdam, for those of you tweeters. Surprisingly, a decent percentage of you aren't on Twitter, which is that an Amsterdam thing? Anybody? Is that an Amsterdam thing?
This guy is mounted on the throne.
He's
like the king of Wakanda. I'm coming to you first.
He's like, we do not do Twitter here.
Not here.
Not here.
Out, T'Challa, out. Oh, sorry. At a moment. We'll
Take your Twitter. So... Bless you, bro. So no, it was quite fascinating. For those of you who are on Twitter or any form of social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, please share on the hashtag, because this obviously scales the conversation. We became an international concern by people who realized that what we were talking about wasn't just for us by us. If we're not going to take hold of this, the narrative that's being told about the continent and its role in this coming fourth industrial revolution, then we have ourselves to blame. We have our children to answer to. And you're hearing from a fellow African, but I'm speaking as a fellow human being. If we get right the opportunities that technology and innovation are bringing forward for the continent, we all win. We all win. And that's why it's so important. It's not just about the village, right? The village goes way past the shores of our continent. It is an international concern. It's not just about our diaspora community. It's about people who care and understand that being Africa-focused is really just being human-focused, and that technology is nothing more than an enabler for a future that we can all make happen the way we want to happen. So we're really so glad to have you a part of this. And we have the blessing of having an incredible panel here tonight, who will listen to later on, an incredible fireside chat guest. But then we have all of you, an incredible resource of brilliant individuals who bring a lot to the fore. We're not going to put that to waste now. Never. So we're totally going to
sound
expect you.
effects, guys. If you didn't know,
Yeah.
you'll notice that I do the sound effects when he's talking. So.
He does. You know the one I love.
Don't judge me.
He does the what's the conspiracy theory?
That's the
Conspiracy theory.
So
Do
if
it
I
again.
start doing that,
Yeah, so if you ever listen to the show, look out for the conspiracy theory music. Nonetheless, we will be passing this mic through the audience. In this particular case, we're starting with a fireside chat guest. I'm going to invite at this time an incredible individual. He's the CEO and founder of a concern called HYBR, and it's spelled like Silicon Valley style. That's HYBR. So don't go Googling for HYBR with an ER. You know, don't go putting the E where there's no E. It's HYBR. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome at this time Charles Ojei.
woohoo, Charlie. Okay. All right.
By way of introduction, I know there's some people who might be aware of who you are and what you get up to, but it occurs to me that I know a little more than they do. By way of sort of creating a portrait of your professional journey, give these folks a sense of who and what you are and how it is you land up here, and perhaps a glimpse into why we think you're so dope.
Okay.
No pressure. No pressure. Eh?
Sell it, buddy.
I don't know where to start from. You know, people ask me this question, and I'm pretty much struggling with saying I'm an ex-corporate guy, even though today I still, interact with corporations a lot. I'm Nigerian born. My background is in human resources. But never did I practice human resources. Doesn't mean I don't love people or can't, I was very fortunate enough to immediately after college, get into corporate. Started with retail. Sold everything from diapers to soap. Way back in Nigeria.
For a little company called Procter Gamble.
Small little concern. Small
You all might have heard of it. Okay.
And it was quite interesting because actually that was the beginning of the journey in terms of where I am today.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that was really quite experiential for me was having to lead a project that had to do with taking the company into rural markets.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do business with the poor in quotes? And how do you engage from a business model standpoint to ensure that the products you're giving to them drives some level of impact? So way back in 2005, that was what I was doing, and it was quite very, very enlightening and insightful.
So I'm going to jump in there because
Yeah.
I think that's a fascinating point. When I was fortunate to have been part of the Facebook journey into Africa, we also went into Nigeria, and we made a hell of a lot of assumptions, like a lot of corporates do about Nigeria. Now, let me tell you a little tidbit about Nigeria. So when we went there as Facebook, we thought we'd go to Unilever, Procter Gamble, we'd sell them on this fancy kind of custom audience technology, blah, 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 because we always assumed that people would obviously go to the shop front to be able to purchase their goods and services, right? We made that assumption. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I think it's something like 80% of trade in Nigeria happens on the side of the road as opposed to in actual physical stores. So this strategy that we ideated in Silicon Valley, and we sat there, we said, yes, we are going into Africa and we're going to win, was actually fundamentally flawed, right? And it took us about 6 months to realize it because we didn't have feet on the ground. Just a tidbit.
So flip side on that, you grew a non-existent business in rural Nigeria from 0 to?
Well, when I started with my friend, who basically left the company about 2 years ago, 2015, and I asked him, so what has that business done since 2005 till then? And he told me to guess, and I kept guessing, and I couldn't get the number, and it was over $1 billion.
Give this man a round of applause.
And it's very interesting, we make assumptions about the market and the continent. And a lot of times it's really about, a lot of people basically just look at the data and the spreadsheets and say, okay, one of the things we found out during one of the very alarming things was when we go into the villages and our model is sell directly to the store. But you go to the village and there is no store. And you begin to wonder, so, what is the economics here? How do people buy and sell? And we decided to just stick around a little bit. And we then saw something they call the market days. And the market days is where people from neighboring villages come together and they create a market. And the whole day, they basically buy and sell. So it's like a pop-up in quote kind of market. Correct. And after that day, it just vanishes. Yeah. So you might just be driving by and like, oh, you know what? there's no store here, there's no business here, but they have their own structure. And that is one thing, even as entrepreneurs and professionals, when you look at the continent, it's really about looking at it from their point of view. And then trying to then build around that, versus making those assumptions.
I saw this as well. This phenomenon played out. I was in Soweto in Johannesburg. There's a township called Southwestern Township. The acronym is Soweto. And we drove in there on a Saturday morning. I think I was going to a funeral. And I noticed all these trucks driving into Soweto. These like livestock trucks. And when I was coming out, I saw that the trucks were all parked on the side of the road and they were literally selling cattle and sheep off the back of the truck, because generally Saturday, Sundays are funerals and weddings in township markets. So this pop-up concept was literally these livestock trucks would drive in. There'd be lines and lines and lines and lines, because Soweto's kind of urban village, not really a village, it's modern urban.
It's South Africa's biggest township, urban collection of people.
Yeah, urban township.
Frankly, urban township.
Yeah, lots of, there's buses and trains. It's like organized.
We couldn't call it a suburb or a neighborhood, folks.
It is a sub. Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough.
But anyway, point made.
We digress.
We digress.
This happens on the show often.
The phenomenon of rural pop-up or kind of not urban pop-up is something that's been happening for a long time, because it suits the need at the point of pain and then it disappears.
Yeah.
And then we make it really fancy because Heineken's got these great pop-up bars that happen and all of a sudden it's a thing. But we've been having it.
I mean, I don't see this as a digression, by the way. I think it's a very hard. Some people might ask, so what's the future of Africa?
Yeah.
Where is the business? Where is the opportunity going to come from? Rural is a big word. 70%, Nigeria, for example, 70% of the rural business is sitting in rural. So it's really about, especially with startups coming up today, a lot of times we want to, develop solutions for the, popular cities, Lagos, Johannesburg, Cape Town. Yeah. We don't want to go in deep. We need to, oh, sorry.
Lusaka. Put me in there. I'm from Zim. Shout out to you.
How do we develop, develop solutions for the masses? How do we really go in deep? And that's one of the things I really excited.
This is part of the reason why, folks, we've invited Charles to the show, because not to knock anyone who calls himself a sort of innovation architect or someone who understands the market, quote unquote, there's a lot in the nuance of actually being embedded in the realities we're discussing here. And he hasn't said it because he dives into the content of conversation quite quickly. But we're talking about a man who's worked in the trenches at the sort of level we've started to describe and excavate now at DuPont, Procter Gamble, Samsung, all two of the GE, in the Nigerian, in the East African and West African context, even Southern Africa, in the case of DuPont, for example. And really, that's what turned our meeting that we had a couple of months ago from like a 15-minute engagement to like, my wife's calling like 2 hours later. Where are you, baby? I'm safe. I'm with Charles. Who's Charles?
Charles who?
Charles what? Charles Ojei. Sorry, I digress. Just a little dramatic reenactment. But so, folks, this is a taste of what we like to see on the show. We're very pragmatic. It's not that we don't believe any kind of insight's worth sort of having or worth sort of excavating, but it's particularly valuable to have someone who's been in the trenches. So given that,
I've got a question.
Yes.
You've got a sterling academic record, right?
Okay.
I don't know anything that you don't know, so don't worry. But you recently chose to do, not recently, but you've done a course that essentially was all about thinking. So it's about leadership, in a creative context. Why do you think that's important?
Oh wow! I was having a conversation with a colleague who actually works in that institution called THNK.
Shout out to THNK.
Shout out to THNK.
There's a little whimper.
Anti-plastic ladies from THNK.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Drop the plastic.
And.
What did you scream there?
Looking out for our people.
Looking out for our people.
Yeah.
You are not wrong. You are not wrong.
Which is bad.
And during that, in my days in HYBR and interacting with so many founders, so many ventures that are uprising, one of the big improvement opportunities I see is leadership. And the concept of leadership is not about wearing that tag, CEO, director, board member. It's really about your capability to envision a new future or envision a possibility and seeing how to bring people together and energize them towards that destination. And for me, leadership is so critical and so required on the continent, whether from a public or from a private standpoint. And I really, thought it very important to go first, develop further my leadership capability, and also, bringing in creativity into that mix, as well, because the challenges and the issues in Africa are quite complex. And you need to be creative to be able to, resolve and, offer some solutions, therefore.
So I have a question about why you'd come and do it in Amsterdam. No shade, Amsterdam, but I suppose a lot of people don't realize, and it's part of the reason we're doing the show here, that there is this Africa-focused innovation, leadership / impact / investment vibe that's becoming a thing. In Amsterdam, and our panel later is going to demonstrate that in a seriously interesting way. But I mean, you're like a Hult Prize, finalist. You got access to all these scholarships. You tons of places you could go, Ivy League or otherwise, to study further for free. Even you choose to pay good money to a school called THNK in Amsterdam as your sort of next step towards what you perceived was necessary. Like, talk me through how you come to that decision and what goes into it.
First of all, I mean, why not Amsterdam? I mean, it's just incredible. Thumbs up.
Well, I mean, aside from it being an incredible city.
Yeah, it is. I must say that. It's really
it's an incredible city. I get that, but I guess I'm trying to tease out like what made it like an obvious choice for you.
The beautiful thing about that program is just the combination of people. You meet, everyone that is, super successful in their various fields and extremely diverse as well. You meet someone who is an investment banker, you meet someone who is, working in the Red Cross in the Middle East, and bringing these, set of people together, with a shared common purpose is really very, very, very interesting. And for me, I was very intrigued by the selection of people and the diversity of people. So that for me was also very, very interesting. Another thing that was interesting was just the radicality in terms of the curriculum. I mean, it wasn't your typical, let's sit down, let's, do case studies, let's go through, all kinds of stuff. It was very practical and immersive. And it was like we were actually creating the experience and the curriculum. There is no certificate or diploma at the end of the day. It's really about you taking those learnings and you adapting those learnings to your situation and also learning with your colleagues as well. So I just found, that kind of principle quite very attractive.
It's kind of un-African, really. No diploma at the end.
No, there's no diploma.
Like, you try explain that to my dad.
You did what?
Like, what?
For how long?
You're gonna pay what?
How much?
Where?
No diploma? And come back home, my son.
Yes. Quickly,
And it personally resonates with me because I believe that even when you're coming up with solutions, it really starts with people. A lot of times we forget that business is really about people doing business or interacting with people.
That's true.
And, as we construct and we offer solutions on the continent, we need to be able to bring the different, people to the table. Like, I have a corporate background, but I don't want to play only with guys from corporate. I want to be able to play with a scientist. I want to play with a teacher. I want to play with a technologist, But that's what HYBR really is about. It's about this hybrid diversity of really bringing people of different races and color and background together, because that diversity itself is wealth.
Okay.
It's really very useful.
So how do you translate that? So, I mean, I hear you, and I think for a guy like you with your sterling record and probably fantastic Rolodex, you can pick up the call and you can play with all these people, right? Then there's me who's sitting there in Johannesburg.
Oh, shut up, Mr. I was hired by Facebook in Africa.
so much anger. So much anger.
Marketing.
Have some water. So there's the other guys, right? There's the guys who are at the bottom in the trenches trying to do the thing, who can't pick up the phone and make things happen, who, are facing on a daily basis these big organizations who don't have that layer of leadership at the top. They've got solutions, they've got insight, they're native to these environments, and they're just hitting their heads on the wall all the time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
What about those guys?
Amsterdam's a dream for those guys.
Very, very interesting question. And what I can say to that is not that I have a direct answer, but is the fact that the privileged ones, if I should use that term, we have a responsibility to be a bridge for these guys. Mm-hmm. We have a responsibility to come closer to them, to recognize them and see how we can work with them to get them to where they want to get to. Okay. Give them the access that they need. Give them the information, because a lot of time it's information scarcity that really is the problem. Give them access to that information, access to that intelligence. A lot of times people think it's all about funding, but like we say in HYBR, funding really comes at the last part. If you get the preliminaries pretty well, funding will happen by default.
And you know what, I think that message coming from you is really great, because you're Niger born, and that's not to diminish anyone who's not, but you're inspirational for that reason. You come out of the system. Your undergrad was in Nigeria. I mean, there are all these stereotypical biases that people think are limiting factors, and they in reality are. I mean, life is better for you if you graduate from an Ivy League. I'm just like by default, just certain things are easier and more, you know what I mean? Money might flow more easily and stuff. But what's also true is that you can be born in Nigeria. You can attend a local university, get the basics you need to set you up for success later. Yes. It is possible.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I feel like that's a perfect segue to talk about HYBR, because our teammate Tayo, in preparing for this interview, she got us really excited about the potential for the model, the framework of thinking that you are looking to apply to do everything you just said in practical terms. So again, the reason we have Charles here today is because he's one of the people who can say rhetoric like that without me going, "Oh, please, buddy, keep it moving." No, because for real, his day to day is living out what he's just talked about. Yeah. He's experienced it. He's gleaned stuff from his corporate career. He's walked barefoot at Think School and and left with a ton of experience and no diploma. And he's emerged on the other side of this incredible wealth of experience and learning and journeying with a freakingly amazing idea for how to move things forward for startup founders, how to invest in the next wave of incredible business people, how to deploy his talents and skills and experience as a professional into the market and see results. Is that a fair setup?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it hit the people with HYBR and what the thinking is and just validate everything I've said to set it up, man.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. That was a lot.
Huh?
It was a bit of a mouthful.
Let the man speak.
We just finished a white paper. We spent about 12 weeks really trying to understand the ecosystem.
Why can't it be a black paper?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying.
Okay, we just finished that study. Are you happy now?
I'm happy now.
We just finished the study.
I'm happy now. See, that's what happens when you don't get a diploma.
It kind of like re-echoed.
Look at him trying to get away from this.
Yes, it kind of like
just
re-echoed.
Let the awkwardness settle, bro. Just let it sink in.
You'll get used to me. I'm ready.
You're still my guy. You're still my guy.
Yeah. So tell us about the study.
Yeah, so we wrote the study for Thomson Reuters, and
Did you guys catch that? Well, we just happened to partner with Thomson Reuters on a a study.
Yeah.
Anyway,
just like
look
that.
At you.
Just call them up and
look at you.
We wrote this study, and it kind of like confirmed a couple of the assumptions that we had, and it's really about this might sound very cliche, the ecosystem. When I say the ecosystem, I mean the principal actors that are within the continent trying to shape the narrative around startups and how they grow. I mean, you have the entrepreneurs themselves, you have the corporates, you have the government, you have the investors, you have the foundations, all these guys doing different things. From our point of view, the big question we keep asking ourselves is, so we have so many startups, coming up day in, day out. How do we make them more successful? How can we see more role model startups? In other words, how can we see more scale-ups? And we looked at the data, and one of the big alarming figures that came out, data done by a study done by THNK and Deloitte, is only 0.5% of startups scale after the 5th year. Now, this is
in which geography was this?
This is a global average. So if we come down and we look at Africa, we don't have the number, but my hunch is it's probably not up to 0.1%.
Agreed.
It's 0.1%, and that's like 1 out of 1,000. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. 1 out of 1,000 startups will scale after 5 years. This, if you were just to increase that by 4 or by 3. The progression is huge. And the question is, why is this happening? And there are several reasons. And we said, how can we, not by ourselves, but how can we facilitate these actors to mobilize their resources and everything they have towards the advantage of these startups? And whether it is the corporations who don't understand fully what the startups are going through, and the startups can't speak their language and engage properly. Whether it's in investors that are investing in deals that they are comfortable with, in quote, and is a reflection of their own kind of principles. Whether it's the foundations that are spending money in various ways that might not be reaching the critical pain points of these ventures. So it's really about mobilizing these set of actors in a very programmatic and systematic way. And that's why we have a 5-year venture support program.
So how many years was that?
5 years.
Okay, so shout out to all the venture capitalists who are trying to do this in a year. Because we think you're going to fail.
Yeah, let alone venture capitalists. There's also, I've got an observation around all the other rats and mice systems that are called incubators and
Dang, Musa.
Sorry, I went in. I'm going in.
Sure.
Rats and mice. That's what I call them.
Bleeding on the floor, that rat.
Because you take a survivalist entrepreneur who's got very little to live for, you give him a free Wi-Fi and coffee, and you wrap him with entrepreneurs flying in from all over the world, and you say, we're going to take care of you for 12 months, make sure your business is amazing, and you close your eyes and you throw some money at him and you hope that works, right? What happens is that you get 1 million of these guys coming into incubators. The very incubators that they're coming into are run by administrators and not entrepreneurs, so they're not getting any kind of latent transfer of knowledge. They're not getting any support in terms of their business actually getting customers. And so what happens, you start to get it further on your notch because I'm in an incubator, and you stand up being in an incubator for year 2 and year 3, and you incubate ad nauseum. You actually never get out the incubator, right? So you've got this kind of point of convergence where you're getting all this early talent that you allocate and you put in there. Standard Bank, FNB, all the big banks do it. And the result is that you're not getting any throughput. You're not getting any listings. You're not getting any scale-ups. You're not getting any of that. So they all get stuck incubating for a while until they kind of lose a bit of momentum, and then they go back to their day jobs or whatever it may be. So that's what I've observed, and that's why I call them rats and mice, because they're not doing us any favors.
Wow. I just had this horrible visual of an actual rat
eating the fromage.
No, like in actual, in a belly, like incubating. And then like
eating the organs.
And then like in that Alien movie, like Sorry. Okay. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
Well,
that was
a bit much.
Yeah, but and then killing the host, and then not surviving like the next 10 years. Sorry, it's really dark.
Yeah,
it got really dark really quickly.
Pull him back.
All right, so pull it back.
Well, if I were to, you're definitely spot on in terms of your observation.
Thank you, sir.
So what are you doing differently? Like, what's your big idea? What are you going to do in 5 years that everyone else currently is saying, oh, this is so possible, like in 10 years, and besides we're in 1 year, and besides we're investing in like 10 people at the same time, and this is a game of numbers. One of them is going to blow up, and then we're going to make the numbers, and Silicon Valley is going to come to Africa, and it's going to be Silicon Africa.
Boom.
Well,
what you going to do? What you gonna do?
So what are you guys doing? What's HYBR's solution?
I think what we're trying to do is, number one, put the founder in the center of everything, because building a company in Africa is tough.
Yeah,
it's really tough. I mean, and if I bring it to my home, building a company in Lagos is hard, bro. It will eat you up. Yeah. Like providing leadership, capacity development for the founder. We spend 4 to 5 days per month with the founders, with their companies.
Yeah.
And a big chunk of that is really, being that trusted companion and trusted partner with the founders as they go through their journey as entrepreneurs.
Can we just pause? So firstly, the man said 5 years, folks. Can we just highlight the importance of how long it takes to make it work? No, we're not asking to be treated differently or Africa's somehow special or some slow child. Africa's different, y'all. Things take time over here. There are things that need to be built over time, including infrastructure. That did not exist. Often startup founders are not only just trying to build a startup, they're trying to build the infrastructure that would support that startup. And they're doing it all at the same time at a fraction of the amount of money you'd spend in Europe to do something like what? A new VR app. Okay. So just to pause there. Second thing I'd like us to pause on is what you're talking about, which is support. No accelerators and VC interests and incubators. Money alone won't do the trick. And no, support in the form of like a check-in via Skype every other month or so isn't going to cut it. You will need to roll up your sleeves and get dirty with those people. And that process takes time. It's dirty. It's often disappointing. Correct me if I'm wrong. It often yields very little. It's extremely expensive and it might not work out. Do you know what we call that? We call that business.
That's what it's called.
So
with that said, please proceed.
It starts with the founder. So we spend time, and it could be in the office, it could be, during dinner, and as they go through, their own experience and they are trying to make some decisions, they're able to mirror us, and we can not help them make the decisions, but offer them a wide range of perspectives and options in terms of that specific decision.
Right. And at some point, money comes in?
Money does come in. We need to go to Q&As very shortly.
Oh, yeah.
I've got 2 questions. Oh, 1 question. Then you can ask a question.
Yeah.
And wrap it up.
Oh, yeah. Then we have to let the people speak.
There's still 5 other things we do on top of that, but go on.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we'll engage. How do you coach these guys to fail better? Right? So failure is a integral part of this journey.
Oh, wow,
right?
that's interesting.
How do you coach them to fail better?
I'm not sure we coach them to fail, but...
No, I'll tell you why. Because the stats say that 90% of them will fail.
Yeah.
All right? And I'm juxtaposing that with the African context around failure. Failure is not a cool thing in Africa. Failure is you've got kwashiorkor or some disease, So it's never a good thing. However, you can't break the spirit of young entrepreneurs because they failed once. So hence my question around how you coach them to fail constructively.
Well, I think one of the big things we try to drive is for them to see failure as a learning opportunity. Sometimes you have to try things over. You have to try things and change things as you go along. So it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's really it's really about making them look at failure as an opportunity to learn how to do things differently. And one way we do that is really asking 2 questions. And I've been using this question for 15 years, even in boardrooms, in corporate. What's working? What's not? And when you look at what's not working, you basically look at, okay, should we drop or should we see how we can make it work? So those, juggling those 2 questions, what's working and what's not working, can really offer very, very interesting insights on going forward towards success.
So before we throw it into the audience for a Q&A, I want to ask you to speak to the 3 other things that you said you left out.
I will take the 2 other big ones that really is differentiating.
In terms of your model and how you're doing it differently.
We focus a lot on their business models, and business models not in terms of sitting down and blowing and doing canvases and all that, but really looking at how do we structure the economics and the delivery of the business. So, for example, we had a founder who basically was trying to, sell a device that allows, healthcare workers to test and screen women for cervical cancer. And this is a very interesting device because it's mobile and it's non-invasive. And traditionally, she wanted to take it doctor by doctor and sell it. But we said, no. Let's look at it from another perspective. Let's actually create a program that allows you to train healthcare workers on how to use it, train them on how to create their own screening program, and then give them that equipment as a tool to do it.
Love it.
You might sell that equipment but you've also increased their own capacity to use that equipment. And in them doing the screening, they can also monetize from there. And she goes, wow, and decided to call it the Screen Her program. And she then went and did it in 6 locations, trained about 80 healthcare workers, all in the space of 3 months. Wow. And then, screened about 1,000 women and built collateral around that. Then I said, great job. Now we can come in. So we go sit with a couple of multinationals, and we sit with a company that does the device, for example. We sit with a company that is bringing one of the biggest telcos that is, bringing the connectivity piece. And we sit with another healthcare big manufacturer as well. And we say, you know what? Let's take this from 6 sites to 500. So let's call it Screen Hub 500, and let's figure out a way with your resources and capability and access to market to do this in 3 years. So instantly that moves from a, 6, centers to a $15 million opportunity that then begins to get the product managers and the sales directors in these multinationals excited because, oh wow, suddenly they can see the scale. Yeah. So business model is one area that we really, really look at. And then the other piece is about, tying up the collaboration between the corporates, the startups, the government, and the investors. Yeah. Tying that piece out, preparing the startups to be able to interact with these actors in very productive ways that lead to tangible, scalable results. And that's our contribution to the.
I think that needs a clap, man.
Yeah, give the man
that's very
a warm round of applause. Musa, you're going to head into the crowd over here.
Yes.
He's going to come around with the mic. He's got a question.
Any questions, comments, inputs?
Please say your name before you shoot.
Hi, my name is Lieve de Koning. A bit of a devil's advocate's question, I guess, or maybe even a moot point. But anyway, I'd like your perspective on why entrepreneurship matters. Given those numbers that, we spelled out, you could argue that this does not work for many people. Right? There's a huge pool of losers. I don't mean they're losers, but there's a huge pool of people for whom it doesn't work, at least not at once or not at all. And if you fall in a place where there's no big history of social security, you fall flat on your face as opposed to just on your knee, all that stuff. So you can argue it doesn't work. So your perspective on why is this the way to go?
In terms of entrepreneurship or in terms of our approach?
No, I think she's talking generally, and I love that question. I think you're saying maybe we should be spending more time teaching people how to be good employees. Maybe. I'm just saying I'm playing devil's advocate even deeper than you. So maybe if we just had a lot more happy employees, gainfully employed, making livings for their family, they'd be numbers-wise better than some of the pretty awful numbers that you mentioned earlier.
I mean, the thing, a very, very, very interesting question. I really like that question. And what just comes top of my mind is the importance of entrepreneurship because it is still the biggest contributor to economic development. Like, if you look at what contributes to household income for the masses, it's entrepreneurship. These small businesses. When you add the output of these businesses together, it's a significant contribution in Africa to the economy. The question is how can we make them more productive? They are still the biggest employer. A multinational in Nigeria might not. I work for Samsung. We didn't hire more than 250 people in the whole country. 250. So even if you had 1,000 Samsungs in Nigeria, it's only what? But these small SMEs, thousands. The Small Business Association in Nigeria has 4 million members. If each of those SMEs hire 2 people incremental every year, that's 8 million jobs. So it's really about how can we make this, small, big. And how can we make it more productive?
Is it also fair to say that maybe your question is somewhat framed in, and I'm going to make an assumption here, maybe a Eurocentric or Western perspective, whereas I think part of what you're really saying is that by default, most Africans are entrepreneurs, right?
It's also a factor. It's a factor of circumstance.
It's a factor of circumstance. So I'll have my mother currently is farming 3 acres of onions for the first time in her life. She's turning 70 this year. That is really normal in a place like Zimbabwe, and certainly normal in other parts of the world. And granted, my mother's been quite fortunate in being able to access some of the finance she needed to do the project, but there are hundreds of thousands and millions of people on the continent, all pitching at varying levels at entrepreneurial endeavors of that kind, partly because they can and they've got the drive to do it aspirationally, but mostly because if they didn't, they'd die.
Yeah.
So in the context of what he's saying, really, like, even if we had like a bunch of, average Africans in the room right now, they'd probably be very confused at the question itself. And I suppose in the context of what you're doing with HYBR, we're talking at a scale level that makes the kinds of businesses we're talking about interesting to VCs, to PE outfits, the kind of conversation that is worth having in Amsterdam, because frankly, Velocity Capital and Goodwill aren't getting up in the morning for less than X. Right? And so he's talking about like and because he's been to think, no, I'm just saying, but that's the thing. But so he's talking about facts that bridge the gap between that reality and the reality that gets like real money doing real things in much bigger ways than are currently possible as things stand. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So there's two questions here at the back.
Okay.
I'll start with you, sir. You're new to the group. Did you sneak in the back? Please. Okay, please tell us your name and your surname. Please tell us who your first girlfriend was.
And I think that's totally in keeping with GDPR, right? Totally.
Well,
totally. Yeah, don't worry. Just tell us and we'll be good with your data.
Yeah. Okay. My first name is Ojei Makoa. I'm also from Zimbabwe.
Holla back.
Yeah. So, So I've also interacted with a couple of entrepreneurs in which they stated the fact that, normally, let's say you get venture capital. When you get that money, later on, it's like, okay, they're like, this due diligence cost, they're all this cost, and probably it's like, 150K that you get. Then later on, about 40K is going to all those, to try to figure out, like, if your business plan is good, whatever, then already, you're down 40K, Can't that be also setting up African entrepreneurs to failure? Because already when they were budgeting on that certain amount, and then they have to go back, like, 40K, like in the example that I gave.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, one of the things, and I might trigger a couple of discussions in the room. I mean, the argument is: does every startup need venture capital finance? It would be interesting that there were other instruments of finance or structures of finance that could be, better made accessible to a larger mass of startups or small businesses. Because at the end of the day, it's still about 1 or 2% of these companies that actually access venture capital. And for those of them that do, when you look at the capability and a couple of things that you've mentioned in terms of it reducing the size of the fund itself, those things must happen. You must do the due diligence. You must spend money on a couple of things. But my argument is, can we have more creative instruments of finance that address, a wider pool of entrepreneurs? One of the things that we highlighted in our white paper is, how can we have an ecosystem for the many and not the few?
You said white paper.
Which paper was that?
Oh, sorry. Study. Oh, my God.
Can you take the mic away from that guy, please? Take the mic away.
It's an academic thing.
No, we're messing with you. So, but the other point I think that's worth making in answering that question is Africa has to answer to the environment we're growing entrepreneurs in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we have representatives from the African Business Angels Network here tonight or this evening. And I know, like, it's a huge bugbear with me that we're perhaps not doing enough to ensure that there's there are failure funds much earlier on than when you're sort of 40 years old with your first idea and needing like 200K to make or break, right? We need to be talking about like what happened since you were 16, how many opportunities you were given to try things and fail, what sort of liquidity you were offered by the ecosystem to make that happen. angel investors, those of us with spare cash in our pockets of any kind, or spare experience or resources or capacity in any kind, need to answer for this. We need to be like, so I'm speaking now to those of you who are quote unquote Africa focused, many of you from the continent, like you, my brother. We need to answer, you're part of answering this question. How are you ensuring that dude is in the dude or the dudess you talked about in your example is positioned to execute successfully when they do land investment? What sort of network are they plugged into through the diaspora? And this is partly why we're doing this here, because we realize that this is not a question you can answer sitting in Harare with zero exposure to any other country besides Zimbabwe.
Can I just add one more thing to that? And one of the answers to that is something I like to highlight, which is what VC4A has been doing over the last 8 years, really trying to educate investors and venture capitalists and angel investors around, creating structures that is relevant for the continent, training them and educating them and telling them, this is how it can be done. We need to, not just take the structures from Silicon Valley. We need to basically adapt something, create and adapt something for the local market. And that's what they've been doing for over 8 years now. And doing it pretty well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edwin. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event. I could easily go home right now and be satisfied so far. And I know it's only the beginning. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question kind of goes back to the purpose of entrepreneurship. I'm a very big proponent of entrepreneurship, and I know that globally there's this kind of push for African entrepreneurship being a solution to all these kind of large scale as well as small scale problems. But I'm struggling because I don't think it's sustainable. And here's why. In Ghana, for example, where I'm from, if I want to build a home, I virtually have to become my own construction company. If I need water, I need to become my own water company. If I need electricity, I need to become my own electricity company. If I need security, I need to become my own security company. You get where I'm going? So it's very challenging for people who just want to live a very basic life. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with entrepreneurship. And obviously, globally, you see governments kind of losing relevance because multinationals, there are about 200,000 multinationals that control 50% of the world's resources, employing 800,000 people globally. But governments now are struggling because multinationals are so large that they cross many state boundaries, and there's no single government that can police these multinationals. So I'm acknowledging that globally the role of governments are reducing. But in Africa, I think that we still need to hold our governments accountable. And, it's unfair to put that burden on every single, graduate to be able to come up with a solution to bad roads. I mean, come on, some things governments just need to fix. I don't think it's fair to think that every problem, we can't entrepreneur our way around every single problem. But I think the solution will be to create public-private partnerships where these solutions, these creative minds have the resources and the tools in partnership with our governments to really shape the future in a way that is sustainable.
So that's really more a comment. Yeah. No. Ain't nothing wrong with that, brother. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I can speak to your heart, and I can feel, the message there is, government needs to step up. And, I really like your comment in terms of we cannot entrepreneur ourselves, and what I like to say to that is the entrepreneur has a very interesting opportunity to create a table and then bring the various actors together to the table. How do you, from the time you are building your product, how do you start looking at it from a government standpoint? And how can you start looking at, what kind of conversations need to happen with the government to enable you do what you want to do, a lot better. And this is what we try to tell entrepreneurs, that they should look. Sometimes we're too romantic with with our solutions and our problems, and we forget that there is a broader, a broader scheme of things that are playing. And my response is, as you build your product, how can you actively engage with these stakeholders? How can you engage with them to get them into not just the conversation, but the activity itself of taking that product to life?
And can I just add to this?
No, you can't.
Okay.
Okay, you can add to it. You can summarize. You can summarize.
So no, I'm going to say you're right. At the same time, I also feel like we need to highlight the role of the people in this room, like in terms of what you're talking about. I'll give you an example. Anything wrong with drones that drop blood supplies and medical supplies in rural Rwanda? Right, I was in Rwanda for the first time a few months ago, and it really is like a hilly country, like it really is. So, I mean, I had a really great appreciation for the importance or the benefit of a drone that's going to perhaps drop some plasma in a rural area that would be hard to reach, especially in stormy times. So great, I look at that. But when you see how that development is being sold in places, certain conferences, whether it's Viva Tech or wherever else, centers that basically set the agenda for how our policymakers think, what we ourselves expect of ourselves and our nations and our policymakers. We have to ask ourselves what we're doing to contribute to that narrative. Because I will argue in this moment that if I am, and I'll put myself in an impossible position and imagine what it must be to be a woman with a complex pregnancy at 2 hours away from dying, 3 hours away from a hospital, from the nearest hospital, if the weather's good, drone or no drone, I'ma die, right? And the narrative doesn't accommodate that because we're all celebrating drones, all right? And we're enabling agenda setters who don't have to live out this context to influence narratives that influence how our government spend, who has the right to project into public sphere. And the reason it sounds like such a theoretical or almost like an ideological argument I'm making here. But what I am saying is we all participate in that or allow it in some way or shape or form. All of us. And that's what this podcast pretty much doesn't stomach too readily. Right? This idea that, yes, you're right, we can't entrepreneur ourselves out of a problem. But guess what? We wouldn't have a Middle East fueled by oil if it wasn't for a single entrepreneur at some point, right? He'll remain unnamed because I'm not a fan of his work. But at the end of the day, it took one dude to go and say, hey, oil fields. Conspiracy. No, go read the history. I mean, some dude went into the desert and said, there's oil here and drilling it is possible. No one believed him. He drilled it and it actually was possible and Dubai is a thing, right? So all I'm saying is it took an entrepreneur. It didn't take like the what we now know as the UAE. It didn't take a united sort of Middle Eastern region. It didn't take a bunch of governments to decide this was the future they wanted. It took an entrepreneur to change the economic future of an entire region. Now, granted, I'm not going to speak to like everything else that's unfolded, but I'm just saying that all of this stuff is true at the same time. And it's a complex discussion. And I didn't want to leave the very valid comment you made unsubstantiated with the reality that at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is hard. And yes, in Africa, we have to do more than the average entrepreneur has to do here in the Netherlands, simply because we have to, and sorry, but that's just how it is.
So as we break, I'd like to leave you with a parting thought. That entrepreneurship is a sexy word for survival, where I come from. And therefore, if you think about this context of survival, there's a lot of things that don't make logical sense if you're going to look at them through a very structured way of trying to understand a lot of stuff. So access to things like funds and finance happen through very informal structures called stokvels and savings groups. There's a lot of money there. But the rest of the context hasn't caught up enough to understand that you're trying to move people from survival to thriving. And therefore, that bridge has never been built. The mechanics, the systems, the thinking, all the rest of that understands that I'm taking this person from surviving. And yes, they're framed as an entrepreneur, and that's a word that we use. But all I'm doing is I'm shifting them from surviving to thriving. And in so doing, we actually lose the empathetic point of view, which is going to allow you to make the correct decisions. And we shall engage further after the break.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more time, ladies and gentlemen, please, for
Charles Ojei.
being on the show. Charles Ojei of HYBR.